Needless Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and I want to wish everybody happy Friday the 13th. I hope that you're able to celebrate the birth of young Jason Voorhees in your own special way somewhere. Originally, today's episode was actually going to be Friday the 13th themed in some way. There was a thought at one time that we would do a needless commentary on another Friday the 13th movie. I was going to do an episode about phobias because, as we all know, triskaidekaphobia is one of the big ones that really is probably nonsense. Like, I would imagine it's more people that are very, very superstitious get nervous about Friday the 13th than they have an actual phobia of it. But I don't know. There's phobias of everything, so there's no telling what you people are scared of. But none of that matters because something way better than any of that came up. Today's guest, we have a special guest today, is Sam Koji Hale, who's the director of a movie called Yamasong, March of the Hollows. It is the first major non-Muppet puppet film to be made in the United States since Team America. I got this opportunity. Obviously, you know, if you know the show, you know that Mr. Bo Brown sent this gentleman in my direction, and I said, of course I want to interview Sam Hale. Why wouldn't I? And we set it up, and we had an absolutely awesome conversation that ranged everywhere. Obviously, we talk about Yamasong quite a bit, and the amazing voice cast involved. You guys, you're not even going to believe Abigail Breslin, Nathan Fillion, Frida Pinto, Malcolm McDowell, Whoopi Goldberg, Bruce Davison, Peter Weller, George Takei, and Ed Asner to top off the voice cast of this movie. Do you understand what I just said? That's crazy. That's amazing. Bruce Davison alone I could just listen to for hours, but you throw in RoboCop, you throw in Sulu, you throw in whoever Whoopi Goldberg's character was in Theodore Rex, maybe not the best example. Throw in Guinan. How about that? Guinan, right? This is amazing. This is a crazy, crazy voice cast, and I can't wait to see this. You can see the YouTube trailer, or the movie trailer on YouTube. If you go check it out, that's Yamasong. If you Google that, you're going to get this movie. But it's awesome. I had a great time talking to Sam. We talked about everything from 80s toys and cartoons, because that's what we do here a lot. And Sam's very obviously from my generation, so he knew his stuff, to the making of this movie, to all kinds of other stuff. It was an awesome, wide-ranging conversation you guys are really going to dig. I want to talk really quickly, and this is going to be a kind of a mixed audience type of thing, but WrestleMania happened this past Sunday. I'm not going to do a full rundown because that's not what we're here for today, but I just want to say that it was, I was super excited going into the show. I was really stoked for this WrestleMania, and it delivered some very good matches and two like WrestleMania moment feeling matches. And that was really it. The Ronda Rousey match was, as far as being a big-time WrestleMania match, it delivered 100%, maybe over 100%. Rousey was tremendous. Triple H showed ass like only Triple H can. Stephanie, we got a satisfying comeuppance from her. Kurt Angle was in there, did his thing. I mean, he looks like $1 million. You know, it hurts me to watch him standing there, but when he gets in to wrestle, the guy goes. And then the Charlotte Asuka match, which was probably the best match of the night, was great. So anyway, I mean, I wasn't disappointed with WrestleMania. It just was a little flatter than I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be a much, much bigger show than it was. But some of the results were a little confounding. Some of them were disappointing, and then the main event was just a big turd sandwich on top of an otherwise pretty fun, okay evening of wrestling. So there you go. There, real quick, just my WrestleMania rundown. I probably should have written something, but I got to tell you guys, my motivation to write is just not there right now. So thank goodness for Beth and for Jerry and for Devlin and anybody else that writes for the site. Well, that's it. That's pretty much everybody now, I think. If I left somebody out, it's because it's 6:45 in the morning. I just got off of another hellish night of work, but it's okay because I only have one more, and then going into this weekend is the Suicide Girls Black Heart Burlesque Saturday night. April 14th, you can still get your tickets to Center Stage. It's going to be amazing. And then Sunday, I am taking Phantom Jr. to see Weird Al Yankovic, and I went a little crazy last year when I bought the tickets, and I bought the VIP backstage big deal tickets, so me and my son are going to meet Weird Al Sunday, and I'm a little freaking out about it. I'm not going to lie. Weird Al is one of my first heroes, and one of my first, and one of the only ones that has been consistently my hero for 30 years, longer, I guess. And I'm a little I'm not nervous, but man, what do I say to Weird Al? Because I'm meeting him Sunday. Whew. I think Phantom Jr. is probably going to handle it better than I do. But I'm very excited. I'm very excited about this concert because it's something different from his normal tours. But the fact that we're going to go backstage and meet Weird Al, the Weird Al, UHF Weird Al, Polka Party Weird Al in 3D, Dare to Be Stupid, song that was in Transformers, the movie, in 1986, Weird Al. Weird Al, the omnipresent pop culture icon, the symbol of the nerd culture movement that we're currently in the midst of, or one of the symbols at least. Wow. I need to stop thinking about it, or else my head's going to explode. You guys, holy crap! All right, but before the Suicide Girls Black Heart Burlesque tour, which, by the way, I'm excited about that. Me and the missus are going to go. We're going to have a great time. We got a room downtown. We're just going to hang out down there. So you know, here is how significant Weird Al is to me. I have so much more energy, nervous energy, excitement, anticipation stored up for the Weird Al experience than I do for tattooed naked girls dancing. That's saying something, you guys. All right. Anyway, prior to all of the events later this weekend, this evening, for you guys anyway, Friday the 13th, I have purchased tickets to take the family to go see Rampage, the new Dwayne Johnson vehicle, because I love the Rampage arcade game. I liked the NES game as well, but the arcade game was very formative for me because back in the day when I was a youth, lots of people had birthday parties at the roller skating rink. And I never was able to roller skate, and it's not for lack of trying. Almost every time I went to one of these birthday parties that my friends had at the roller skating rink, I got my skates, put them on. I tried to wheel around, not in the rink itself, but like out on the edge area where you could kind of practice a little bit. I'd try and stand up, bust my ass, be incredibly uncomfortable. And I think some of it maybe has to do with my build. I'm very tall. I have a very long torso. And maybe I'm just making excuses. I don't know. But I never got the hang of roller skating. I couldn't ever do it. I tried as a youth. I tried as a small child. I tried as a youth, as a teenager. I've tried as an adult. And I don't have the muscle groups required to propel myself around on wheeled shoes. I just don't. But what I do have is the hands to kick some ass at Rampage. I loved that game. I still love that game. As a matter of fact, there's a place called, I think it's called Flashback. It's out in Loganville, Georgia. And it's an arcade, but they have food and they have booze, and it's a really cool little place that I dig quite a bit. They've got Rampage there, obviously. But I still love Rampage. It's not a faded thing. So that video game is a very special place to me, because while all my friends were out roller skating around, I was at the cabinet playing Rampage all night, and I whooped ass at that game. Lizzie was my preferred character, and I love it. And now The Rock is starring in, and look, people look at the trailer and they're like, this is going to be stupid. Yes, dum-dum. Of course it is. It's a giant gorilla, a giant lizard, and a giant wolf fighting each other and tearing apart a city, and it's starring The Rock. Come on. What do you want out of this movie? You know what I want out of this movie? I want exactly what I just said. 3 big giant creatures beating the crap out of each other and eating a city. At some point, one of these creatures had better reach into a window and eat a person sitting on a toilet. That's all I want out of this movie. That's it. That's my goal. So everybody who's being a dick about Rampage, calm down, sit back, and enjoy the spectacle of it. And that's what we'll be doing tonight. And I'm very excited about going to see Rampage. Not as excited as everything else we've got going on this weekend. Big weekend, but definitely excited. So I think that about covers everything I wanted to talk about in the intro. I do want to tell you to go to needlessthingspodcast.com, click on that big square Amazon box on the top right side of the page, go in through the portal, and order yourself a copy of Rampage on whatever the last system it came out on is. I don't know. I'm sure there's a PS4 version of Rampage out there somewhere. Order some toys. I think the Rampage toys are Walmart exclusives, and I can't encourage anybody to buy anything from Walmart, but go buy yourself a gorilla and a lizard and a wolf and pretend they're the Rampage toys, so you don't have to give Walmart any money, because Walmart is partially responsible for the demise of Toys R Us, and I'll never forgive them for that. Just go in, buy some Amazon stuff. Needless Things gets a little bit of a kickback. It doesn't cost you anything extra. You don't have to buy Rampage stuff. You can buy socks. You can buy puppets. Maybe you need some puppets. Maybe you need straws. I was supposed to buy some drinking straws. Do you know how hard it is to find long drinking straws, like 10, 11-inch drinking straws? They're not in stores. I don't know where you get them, but every once in a while they show up in the house because Mrs. Troublemaker is amazing at finding things like that. But we're in a long straw drought right now. So go to the Amazon, needlessthingspodcast.com, and order yourself some long drinking straws for those tall cups you have that you don't want to pick up and tip back. You just want to have a nice straw to drink out of. Wouldn't that be nice? And wouldn't it be nice to help out Needless Things? All right, that's all I got for you. Here's a little music from the Mystery Men, and then we're going to be talking to Sam Hale about Yamasong, March of the Hollows. Check mark. Can we support puppetry films? Yes.
Yes.
Put my money towards that.
You can write it in there, budget money for puppet films.
And we'll actually that's not a bad place to start right there. We'll call that the opening line, so all the listeners know that we want to support puppetry in every way that we can.
Including with our tax money.
Including with our tax money, absolutely. All right, well, Sam, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David.
And what we're going to talk about today, obviously there's going to be a lot of puppet talk, but I've sat here and I've looked at this amazing press kit, and the first thing I want to say is I'm a big toy guy. I started the website writing toy reviews years ago. That was like one of the first things I put up, and I'm really, really enthusiastic about these, small works of art. And the first thing that got me looking at the information about Yamasong was the character designs, and I immediately wanted toys. So
yeah, absolutely. I immediately want toys too. It would be great someday, Yeah, I mean, I've got the originals in my office, so I guess I have my full-scale 20-inch toys. But
you've got the best Yamasong collection there will ever be.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's one of that's a big part of my background. I started as a fine artist / illustrator, and I grew up with comics and toys, so there's definitely that influence running through everything there. And for me, making the puppets are like creating these. It's creating these moving sculptural objects that can be performed. And I know my puppeteers on Yamasong said multiple times they felt like they were just grown-ups playing with toys again, and they loved it.
Well, and that's what we've talked about on the show a lot of times when we discuss puppetry, is that, whether you know it or not, when you're a kid, if you play with toys, you're training to become a puppeteer.
That's right.
Not everybody follows that path, but we all have, we all get our feet wet, way back in the day.
Yeah, we all have some level of training in puppetry. So why aren't there more of us out there doing it?
Right, absolutely.
We've all got that skill.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up all over the place. I was born in Portland, Oregon, and then we lived in Washington, Colorado, Montana, and Kansas.
Oh, you grew up in beautiful places.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, most of the places were suburban or suburban / rural. I've lived in LA now more of my life than anywhere else, so it's strange to wind up in such an urban place considering, all the places I grew up in. But yeah, they were pretty beautiful. A lot of countryside and mountains and open plains, and yeah, I've kind of run the gamut.
So you said growing up with toys and comics and whatever else. What kind of stuff were you into then? Like, what was sparking your imagination at the early age? Yeah. Me and my brother and my best friend Nathan, I think we alternated a lot, especially between Star Wars and G.I. Joe. I had a big G.I. Joe collection. He had a big Star Wars collection, so he'd come over to my place and we'd play with G.I. Joes, and then we'd go to his place and play Star Wars. So those were probably the two biggest influences as far as toy. Well, you've struck a chord with me, because G.I. Joe will always be, and there are plenty of toy lines I love, but G.I. Joe is my line.
Yeah. You know what I loved about it was that you could, with the screwdriver, you could take them apart and reassemble them and make different characters. And so I got into that after I kind of ran the gamut with the characters I had. Then I started kind of like kit bashing them and turning them into brand new characters. And I loved that and had a great run with that until I guess, till I got to, like, say, mid-teens or something. And then one 4th of July, we decided that there was going to be a big battle, and that they would all perish in the final fire, So that's how that all ended. But it was glorious.
That's the tragic story that most G.I. Joe fans have, because unfortunately, when you love warfare toys, it means you're probably going to want to blow things up too.
Yeah, yep. And that 4th, we had a big giant box of fireworks, and we had to put the box to use. So we made that into basically a battleship, and then we placed our characters strategically in different parts of the battleship, and then set about blowing them up. So yeah, that's what happens. I will not do that with the Yamasong puppets, though. I promise you that.
Good. I'm going to hold you to that. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. G.I. Joe, not only in my favorite toy line, but really my introduction to caring about storytelling as a kid, because I got into the G.I. Joe comics big time, because Larry Hama, he kept that
Yeah.
story going, well, and still is to this day, but kept that going for so long, and it really engaged me the way he wrote those characters. And that, what kind of storytelling stuff do you think was catching your attention early on?
Oh gosh, you mean in reading the comics or playing with?
Well,
the
anything
toy?
really, because I mean now you're telling stories now, and that not everybody has a talent for that, and it had to come from somewhere. There had to be something like a world or a creation or something that kind of caught you in the beginning.
Well, yeah, well, definitely, comics were a big inspiration. And, speaking of like G.I. Joe, and you mentioned Larry Hama, I just have to, and I know, G.I. Joe fans probably all connect to this particular story, but Silent Storm.
Oh, yes.
The one that had no words, it was all just visual, and I think, wasn't that the one that introduced Storm Shadow?
It was the one that gave that backstory.
Yeah.
That connected them.
I remember that one pretty well, and also going way back. I mean, going back to almost the beginning of the G.I. Joe comics with the relationship between between Snake Eyes and the bounty hunter Quinn.
Yes.
Who I don't think they ever made a toy from, as far as I know.
They finally did with the
they did.
With the 25th anniversary toy line.
Oh my gosh!
They finally made a Quinn. He's like the updated sort of version of it, but yeah, they finally made one.
Well, I loved that whole storyline too, where he was this kind of gray character, but had a relationship with Snake Eyes. They definitely had a respect there, and then his sacrifice to save the Joes was that one. I remember that one stuck with me, and almost I don't know if Yamasong doesn't have this particular storyline, but I do kind of gravitate to some of those stories sometimes. Like that reminds me then of in Thor comics, which they riffed on in the Thor movie with the Executioner, standing there with the two machine guns and holding back the zombie forces or the undead forces.
Yes.
Those kinds of stories stick with me, and I mean lots of stories, but I'd say for me a lot of it started with comic books and then branched out into say broader mythology and non-Western stories. I really started getting into more like Japanese folk tales and I was studying Japanese at college, so that kind of led me down that path as far as stories. But always kind of these big grand tales of fighting in some kind of fantasy world or exploring a fantasy world and discovering the things there. I played D&D for a few years there too, so that also played into it as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That any kind of background in role playing like that is gonna help sharpen your storytelling mind. I think that's always anytime you hear D&D somewhere, you're like, okay, this person is creative.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. You definitely sharpen your skills, and for me, I think what came out of D&D was just this love of varieties of characters. You've got, none of your parties are straight fighters or straight wizards or straight, one race or another, but you've got a diverse mix of characters. So I think some of it comes from that, and some of it's just a bigger, broader kind of American story about people from different backgrounds. We're all immigrants, or we're all from somewhere else, except for the natives, who were here first. But in general, it's kind of a big, broad story of a lot of different people coming from different places with different goals and different cultures, and that definitely plays into Yamasong.
Well, and I loved seeing, you mentioned getting into the various Eastern mythologies, and when I was looking through the character designs, the Terrapin, I absolutely loved them, because I've always, as far as the I haven't gotten as deep into it as I did with like Greek mythology and whatnot, but I definitely am a fan of the concept of the yokai, and the Kappa has always been, and probably just because I love Ninja Turtles, but
right, yeah.
The Kappa, it's always been one of those characters, creatures, whatever, that anytime I see that humanoid turtle form, I just dig it. And seeing the Terrapin in this, I was just like, immediately. I was like, those are my guys.
There you go. Well, this is funny because when I used to work at Kyoto Brothers Productions, and and they're the ones that made Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But they also they also made the Ninja Turtles TV series, and so they had some Ninja Turtles around the shop. And then one day Kevin Eastman came in, and they were setting up to do a big auction thing at Meltdown Comics here in LA. And so Kevin was there helping to kind of pick out like Ninja Turtle stuff that was going to move over to Meltdown Comics. And I'd already made my short film by that point, so I kind of gave him the DVD, and I said, "Hey, check this out. It's got fighting turtles." And then I was like, "Oh God, he probably just thinks it's a Ninja Turtle knockoff." So I don't know. I don't know if he ever actually watched it, but he does have a copy of it anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you know what? I didn't know. I actually interviewed the Kyoto brothers at DragonCon last year, but it was
sweet.
Well, it was for an Evil Clowns panel, though. So Ninja Turtles, because I'm guessing it had to be Next Mutation that they did, the live action anime, and that didn't even come up. I didn't even get to talk to him about that one. That's fantastic.
Oh, wow. Well, missed opportunity there.
The life is full of them, right?
Yeah, especially after you've done the interview, then you're like, oh, crap, I should have asked him about that.
It happens every time. I guarantee, as a matter of fact, an hour after we hang up, I'll be like, oh, wait, the thing.
Yeah,
but,
yep.
We'll do our best to cover it all. So at what point did puppetry come into your sort of awareness?
Well, growing up as a kid, I was definitely aware of the Muppets. I remember tuning in on Saturdays and watching the Muppet Show. But it's funny. At the time, I didn't think, hey, I'm gonna work in puppetry. I want to make puppets. I didn't get into puppets till grad school. So for a lot of my puppet contemporaries, I came to the game kind of late along the way. And I did that because I was at grad school working on a book illustration degree, and it was a book project, and I had done 14 illustrations, and I was like, this just doesn't capture the full world I'm trying to build with this book. So then a mentor said, hey, why don't you do a puppet show too? So I was in San Francisco at the time, and I found the San Francisco Bay Area Guild and joined that guild. And my first meeting, Dave Goelz was there with Gonzo. So I got to meet Dave Goelz. I got to see Gonzo the Great up close, and it was one of these things. At the time, I was so new to it. I was like, oh, I guess every guild meeting there's always going to be a Muppet or something. There's always going to be all this stuff at these guild meetings. I didn't realize it was a really, really special thing that was my first guild meeting. That was a very special event that Dave Goelz brought Gonzo. But that's what really launched me. And then for a few years I was doing Muppet style, and then I started branching out, and then I got into tabletop, which is the inspired by Japanese traditional bunraku puppetry, and that's where you've got 3 puppeteers performing one puppet, and that's really where Yamasong kind of grew out from that. So it took a few steps, a few changes in direction, but that's how I got into puppetry.
Well, and that's what's so fascinating about puppetry, and we end up talking about it every time we discuss it here on the show, is that it's not just the putting your hand in the puppet and making it talk. There's so many different varieties, from shadow puppetry to standard puppetry to what you're working with now, and it really is almost the ultimate form of expression.
I totally agree. I think it's people who haven't worked in puppetry or puppets on film, which is adding a whole other layer to it. To me, I feel like that. Yeah, I agree with you in that I think it really launches you into tickling all of the creative, muscles and joints that you've got. It is, I'd say, one of the most creative kinds of expression that you can get into.
Well, it's combining performance with this beautiful visual art form of creating the puppet, whatever that may be. And that's the other thing, is the puppet can be anything. If you need an animated toaster, you can make a puppet. If you need a realistic human, puppet. If you need a warrior turtle, I mean, literally you can come up with so many different things and so many different ways to express a creative vision that it's just so amazingly versatile. And I'm still, even years after sort of being introduced by Bo to all the different forms it takes, and I'm still fascinated with how many ways it can be used.
Yeah, it's amazing the diversity of and the variety of things out there, and again, since maybe because I came to puppetry later than a lot of people, I sometimes ask myself, it's like why aren't there more people in puppetry? If more people were discovering the magic of it, for lack of a better term, that I think there'd be a lot more people involved, but it's such a kind of small community of true believers,
Well, I think it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in general, people only have so much of themselves to devote 100% into a thing. And creative people, maybe they can give a little more of themselves to one specific thing, but then even when you pare it down, even to among the creative people that have what it takes to invest into puppetry, because puppetry is so much more demanding than anything else, I think.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Yeah.
I think it takes a very specific type of person who has enough passion in their heart for puppetry. Like, I think a person who's really, really good at acting is really good at acting, but they don't have what it takes to be a puppet performer. I think it's a whole different level of performance and devotion than I think any other. And that's not to take anything away from other creators or other performers, but it's so many things put into one that you have to put so much of yourself into, I think.
And I think, and then I think what you find is that in a lot of puppetry circles, the people involved in puppetry are kind of, the one-man or one-woman show. They write it, they direct it, they perform in it, they build the puppets, they, even, score the music, they, did all the lighting cues or whatever. I found there's a lot of those kind of, brilliant, super creative, one-person show people out there. What I found with doing the film is it's kind of hard. You kind of have to step back and start kind of parsing out what you're used to doing all by yourself to a bunch of other people. So
yeah.
So making the film, I was still writing, but and I designed the puppets and I sculpted most of all the main characters' heads and hands, but then turned the puppet fabrication over to a team of puppet builders, and then when you get into the post side of it, or even the shooting side, when you're shooting, you're working with a team. We ended up with 8 puppeteers working on the show. So, 8 puppeteers bringing those characters to life. And then you get into post, and we had, I don't even remember how many visual effects artists, cleaning up all the shots and adding effects and embellishing and animation and all of that. And, I really stepped away, appreciating the collaborative and creative process, especially when things worked, on the hard days, you step away kind of cursing the collaborative process.
Well, and I think that's an important quality to have, because not everybody can step back and sort of let other people have a hand in their creation. And I think that's an important thing to be able to do, because a lot of times, because I would imagine you've put many years into this project at this point, and a lot of times...
Yamasong, well, the feature alone was about 2.5, 3 years, and then the original short was a year or so. There's a big gap in between, but it's still, even a year of your life on something is a big amount of, good chunk of time to dedicate to something. 3 years was definitely a marathon. It felt like a marathon. That's what I tell people. If you're going to do a feature film, be prepared for a marathon.
And that's definitely a huge part of it, is that time to devote to it. But before, I want to talk about the production of the feature. But first, I want to talk about where it came from and sort of the origins of this world, because the vision that you have of this world is very, very clear from the first few frames of the trailer. Where did this come from? Yamasong, March of the Hollows it's really the feature follow-up to the short film Yamasong, which I made back in 2009. It premiered in 2010, almost exactly
same time of year, April of 2010 at Florida Film Festival. And this was for Heather Henson's company, Ibex Puppetry. We have a series called Handmade Puppet Dreams. And I'm still working with her as a producer, making these films, helping other filmmakers make films. But I started out as a director on my own short film, which I pitched to her in 2009, and she funded. So it started with that, and it began with music. The soundtrack for Yamasong's short film comes from Own Ensemble, which is an LA-based fusion taiko, Eastern, Western musical sound kind of performing group. And we had met prior to that, and they love the puppets. I'd done a live show in Little Tokyo, and the founder of Own Ensemble, Shoji Komeda, was in the audience, and he came up and said, I want to work with you. I want to do something with puppets and taiko drums. So that's how it started, and it took a few years of just kind of talking back and forth, and then they started working on a new album, and they had a song in there that became Yamasong. So that's how it really started.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it when a piece of music can create something in you.
Yeah, and now looking at the feature, we've created this really deep, broad world that really goes all the way back to one single piece of music.
So, when creating the original short, what was the process for that? What was planning it out, gathering your materials, figuring out how much time you had to invest in it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, it started with the idea, when Shoji gave me a copy of their new album, and it just had track numbers. It didn't even have titles. So I was just listening to the music and listening for a song that might be a good one to turn into something visual. And there's this one song. It's actually the first song on the album, and it conjured up this idea of climbing up a mountain, but on an otherworldly place. But it was definitely a journey up a mountain. And it ended up, he had written that song inspired by Mount Shasta, which is the mountain that he grew up at the base of in Northern California. And it's kind of like, his Mount Fuji. I was thinking of Mount Fuji when I was, visualizing it. But the fact that we were both, thinking about this journey up a mountain, even though it was, two different mountains and then mine was more fantastical, it still all came from this source piece that was the music that was all about climbing a mountain. So I started writing it, just jotting down ideas that came to me as I listened to the music. And then after 2 or 3 passes of that, then I looked at all the different, notes of, whatever visuals popped in my head, and then started crafting a narrative out of it. So that's how it started. And then, once what really helped was getting the funding from Heather. So once I had that, then I could sit down and go, okay, it's going to be an 8-minute film. These are the types of characters that are going to be in it. These are the beats of the story. And then I started, working on I don't think it was really scripted. I think I just went right to storyboard and then made an animatic. So created an animatic for the visual narrative. That one, that's kind of like Silent Storm. There was no dialogue. It was just telling a story with characters and their actions and reactions to what's around them, and leaving it to the audience to interpret it to a certain degree.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of storytelling through visuals, and show it, don't say it.
Yeah, and puppets do that really well. They're, when you get into too much of like talking heads, I think with puppets, anything when there's too many talking heads and nothing too visual to look at on screen, it starts to get boring.
Mm-hmm.
But puppets are, if you think of like Punch and Judy, things like that, it's very action kind of driven, and there's an action aesthetic that puppets can capture, that even, I think goes beyond, human performance in a way, because it can be very big and broad, and your characters can, they can jump off the ground and fly through the air and do things above and beyond what we normally can in our physicality. So where was I? I did an animatic, and then started planning out, which characters. I guess, let me back up. I had to decide how many characters first, and environments and what we could do for the budget we had, and then.
Now, did you immediately have ideas for the characters that would appear in this? Like, were these already in your head in a way?
Yeah, some versions of them. it's funny, the Terrapin character, which is the character now that Nathan Fillion voices in the feature, that character I made specifically a turtle character because Kometa, Shoji Kometa, his family name is Turtle Field. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a turtle character because it's for their music video essentially. And so that character was always going to be a turtle. But then the automata, Nani, that character, I think she really came from an idea that I still have a story idea about two androids or robots that are trying to escape into another world. And I'll tell you about it here on the podcast. Nobody take this idea though, okay? I want to do it someday. This is going back to the studying Japanese and Japanese culture and Japanese art, and Japanese woodblock prints are referred to oftentimes as being in the floating world. Ukiyo-e means floating world. So I thought, wouldn't it be kind of a cool idea if it's in the future, but there's still a Japanese aesthetic, but these Japanese androids are trying to escape into the floating world, which is basically a virtual sanctuary for them to get away from the humans that are trying to destroy them. So that's the story that I was working on at the time when Shoji brought the music to me. So I'm like, you know what? We're gonna put an automaton in the story, and plus it's puppets. So I thought it'd be perfect, that there's a living turtle character or living creature, and then an unliving, automated character, but she's discovering this living world and that really is what brought the story together, was that the unnatural automata character discovers a beautiful paradise and wants to go there, and then is transported there and goes on an adventure, but then is returned back to her artificial world.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on in the short film.
And that 2010.
Yeah,
you said.
And that's when we premiered it, and then it played at Dragon Con and did great there. It won Best Animated Fantasy or Best Fantasy Short Film, and then it won Best Film of the festival. So that was I like to say Atlanta's good to us. Dragon Con 2010, and now we're back again in 2018. We
love our puppetry and we love our original fiction.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see new mythologies and new worlds like that aren't. And look, don't get me wrong. I love the Marvel stuff. I love the comics and licensed and whatever. But when I see a new world that captures my imagination, that's something really special these days.
Oh, that's great to hear, because I'm sure you've heard this. Like the independent films, can have a pretty difficult time breaking into, say, a bigger, broader audience, and that's because, like now especially, it's dominated by the big studios, by the Marvel movies and the DC movies. DC somewhat, they're still working on it, but
yeah, they're getting there.
It'll get there. Star Wars, all of those big ones, they're kind of the big boys and girls on the block, and it's nice to hear you say that there is a hunger for new worlds and new mythologies, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, look, everybody likes what's comfortable and the familiar and the brands that we know, but I really am hoping within the next few years that there's sort of a renaissance of new things, and I'm not saying stop with all the comic books, but I would love to see stuff like the Dark Crystal, for instance, things that are just wow, I've never seen anything like this. What is this?
Yeah, and that's hopefully that's what's going to happen. Dark Crystal's just around the corner, so
that's right.
A lot of us in puppetry are hoping that'll kind of inspire a new interest in puppetry, across the boards, especially with the money people who are like, oh, this Dark Crystal thing is pretty cool. Who's out there making puppets? Right. Let's see what we can pull in here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, and really in this day and age, that's all it takes is for one kind of thing or one example of a kind of thing to get some interest or make some money, and all of a sudden you get a lot of people in Hollywood who are like, oh, time to jump on that.
Right. But until then, they're all going to say no.
Yeah,
and
right.
I know that from personal experience. After Yamasong, after the short came out in 2010, I shopped it around for a year, and was told at every door basically, oh, this is too different looking. This is too strange. This is too whatever. It's not. It's not a sequel. It's not a prequel. It's not a reboot of all the stuff that we're familiar with. So that's what I ran into.
Well, I have been told by many people, including our mutual friend Bo, that you basically have to have an elevator pitch that goes, it's like this popular thing mixed with this popular thing. And that's like literally all they want to hear. Yeah.
It's different than if it was in the 1980s, going back to Kyoto Brothers. They always tell the story about when they pitched Killer Clowns from Outer Space. All it was literally, we got this great idea. It's called Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and the producer said, sold. And they didn't even get to the pitch. But
yeah, those days
that's in
are
the 80s when apparently people were throwing money at everything.
Yeah. And that's what it was. And it was the same way with toys back then too. It was just a matter of like, let's try every crazy thing we can until something works, which led to wonderful movies and wonderful toys. That's why people
Masters of the Universe.
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
How did that ever get made? I don't think Masters of the Universe toys or the animated shows would have ever been made in the present time if somebody came up and said, this is the thing, and you're like, what?
And it's funny because when people our age start talking about how wonderful the 80s were, other generations get a little cynical about that, but I really do think it's true that they were a fantastic time for creativity in media and everything else.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's some wild stuff out there. And what's weird to me now is that it's all coming back around, and that's the stuff that it's not weird. The money people, the creatives who are making the decisions probably came from the 80s and the 90s, and they want to make the thing that they grew up with.
Yeah, and that's what's happening in a lot of instances is they're looking at these old franchises and saying, okay, so I loved this thing when I was a kid. Now I can make something with it, and I'm going to make it the way I thought it should be when I was a kid, which in some cases is great, in some cases is maybe not so great.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I'd be guilty of it too. I mean, if I were in that position, it's like Fantastic Four. I understand the idea to try to mess with the fundamentals a little bit because the originals are from the 50s and 60s and it's dated material, and you want to update it and bring it into more of a modern, give it a modern feel, but doesn't always work that well either. Yeah,
I think it takes a very special vision to be able to find the heart of a concept, but make it appeal to modern audiences. And I think for the most part, Marvel's been doing a very good job with that, with few exceptions. But, Fantastic Four, it seems like it shouldn't be that hard. It's a family having science adventures.
Yeah.
Just do that. How modern does that have to get? But, maybe one day we'll see the good one.
I have a feeling if it were me, I'd probably mix it in with a little bit of a Doctor Who kind of feel, because there's the whole, they could go to any dimension, they can travel through time, they can do whatever. But, it's, I think it would, Doctor Who, I guess it would be more if it was episodic or whatever, but the idea that you can go to all these crazy radical places, following the same group of adventurers, I think Fantastic Four would fall right into that same kind of groove, I
agree. It would actually be a better TV show than it would a movie. Just the effects would be the problem.
Right. As long as they have the budget, look at all of the superhero shows that are on now, and they seem to, I'm looking at all the CW shows. They seem to have enough budget for the effects, that they can have speedsters and time travel and magic and sci-fi weaponry and everything pretty much.
Yeah, you'd have to when you've got I'm just visioning Elongated Man on Flash, and as much as I love the way they do the character on there, the effects, you can tell, like, all right, we have this much money and this amount of time to shoot him stretching. Let's get it done.
And so you have 3 shots in that episode where he does something where he stretches.
Right, exactly. And the rest of the time, he's just sort of hanging around. Yeah,
I'm hyper aware of that kind of stuff anymore, especially after having done Yamasong and thinking about how much each shot costs.
Oh gosh!
When I watch a show now, that goes through my head. It's like, sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, how are they doing this? How do they have the budget to do this? I watched the new Star Trek. I just finished watching Star Trek Discovery, and I was like, how do they have the budget to do this episode to episode? Where did they save their money? Because I'm seeing so much money on screen right now. It's just, blowing me away.
I only saw the pilot. We haven't gone back for the full season yet, but that pilot blew me away. I was like, this is a theatrical quality set and effects and everything. I was shocked at how good it looked.
Yeah, and I was stunned. So, if a studio can dedicate the money to make something look good like that, then I think I'm biased, but that's where they should put their money. Put it to making, put it on screen. Put it in in our case, put it in the puppets, put it in the post production. Try to make it the best movie you can. And I have to say, Yamasong, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'm thankful to our producers at Dark Dunes for backing this and making it happen. And I hope that this does open the doors, like we're saying with Dark Crystal, that people see it and they're like, oh, we want to fund a puppet film and get some of these other. There's a great body of puppet filmmakers out there right now who are just waiting for this opportunity. So I hope it opens doors for everybody.
So with Yamasong, the feature length follow up, there are so many layers, because I was looking at a lot of the behind-the-scenes shots here, and how do you orchestrate a scene in something like this to be filmed?
We'll start with the script and storyboards, and storyboards are so helpful. I mean, they're invaluable. It's just being able to communicate to your crew what you're going to shoot and what your angles are, and being able to decide, with the AD in the beginning in the morning, you're sitting with the assistant director and you're going through shots and deciding what your shot list is, and you're cutting it up and, ganging all of your same angles together, all your close-ups, we're going to shoot together, this angle we're going to shoot all together, this angle we're going to shoot all together. So having the boards definitely helps. One thing I noticed for Atlanta Film Festival, actually, I was putting together stills for it, and I was thinking about it, I was like, maybe this is how it is with film in general, but especially with puppets. We could only shoot 2 puppets on camera at one time because it's 3 puppeteers per puppet. So generally we had 6 puppeteers, sometimes up to 8, but we can never get a third puppet on screen unless that puppet wasn't moving very much. It was like kind of standing in the background watching or whatever. So you only had to put 1 puppeteer on that puppet. So we had to really plan how to shoot these things so that, that it would be composited in a certain way, and that it would be, everything would be framed in a certain way so it could be composited in post. And so every shot, took planning, and some were easy and some were hard. Fights are the hardest, battle choreography, that takes the most time, but it does in live action too. So, our average day we only shoot half of what we shot on a dialogue day, when we're doing action. So how do you do it? It's planning. It's a lot of planning, and then once you're in there and rehearsing with the puppeteers, then that's the place where there's room for spontaneity and something improvised. Especially in the fights. Like we kind of walk through the fights, and I'd say I kind of want to get from this point to this point. And then the puppeteers would be like, how about this? And they try this or that, and we get into some really, fun, cool moments where that came out of just the back and forth, the conversation with the puppeteers. Does that answer your question? it's a hard question to answer. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah, and it was a little bit too broad, but yeah, that actually nails down really well what I was kind of wondering about as far as, you have this green screen that the puppeteers have to operate against, and that was kind of what I was wondering, is the amount of staging involved, and because I'm sure you storyboard out a fight, but once you're doing it physically in a 3D environment, you have to come up against oh wait, this won't work from this angle. Now we have to move this over here. You had to sort of run into things like that.
Yeah, and definitely. And the extra layer of complexity over, say, live action is that, we've got 3 puppeteers gathered around one puppet. And so you've got to shoot it hopefully where you don't have too much puppeteer behind the puppet. So then that means your puppeteers are off to the side as much as possible. But then sometimes oftentimes the puppeteers, are messing up the lighting because we pre-light the puppets, in the set with the lights to get a certain, get the lights a certain way. Then we bring in the puppeteers and we find out, all the puppeteers on the right-hand side are throwing a big shadow over everything.
Yeah.
So puppeteers, now you all have to move to the left-hand side. So those were definitely some of the creative challenges. We're figuring out the placement of puppeteers and lighting. But we got pretty good at it. Our lighting guys, our lighting team got really good at anticipating that, and we all did. Once we got into it, once we got into the thick of it, we all got good at anticipating the problems that, having physical bodies, looming over the puppeteers could cause.
Actually, one of my favorite shots from the collection that was sent over here is one of the Ram characters kind of in mid-kick, and the puppeteer, the puppeteer operating the head is into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just, okay, I'm going to sit here and move this character around. It's a performance. You can tell.
Yes. It's all, and it's there's screaming and
like a little kid playing with a G.I. Joe.
Yep, exactly. It's the same,
but with a lot more technical skill.
Yes, with more technical skills and more intent. I think I've got 2 kids who play with their action figures. It's a lot of Lego stuff right now, but when they're playing with their toys, it's the same thing. It's like boom, bam, that kind of stuff. It's just, I guess, adults doing it now.
So how did you go about recruiting the right puppeteers for this job?
Yeah, I've been working with a lot of puppeteers over the years, making short films and live stuff. And, for tabletop, I've worked with a lot of tabletop puppeteers who do this kind of style. So it was a mix of bringing in tabletop puppeteers or rod puppeteers who I've worked with in live performance that can work with monitors, because that's one of the big things. You gotta be comfortable working with the monitors where, you're not looking at the puppet you're performing so much as you're looking at what the camera is capturing.
Right.
So, and then there's a lot of film and TV puppeteers in LA, so I'm lucky in that sense. And so it was a combination of bringing in some of the tabletop people and some of the film and TV people. And we got a really good bunch. It's funny, some of the puppet people that I know who in the community who didn't get to work on Yamasong said, next time you should do auditions.
That's great, though. So, that's great. That means they want to work with you. They want you. They want to.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we'll probably do something like that because we ended up bringing in some people from out of town too. I mean, locally there in Atlanta, Raymond Carr. He's a puppeteer in Atlanta, but Raymond I think he was popping back and forth between Atlanta and LA because he was working over at Henson Company. Yeah. And Raymond was great. I just wish that we used him more. He was only on the last couple shoots that we did, and he's solid.
He's awesome. He's a busy man, and I'll get him on the podcast one of these days. His brother John was actually I do a game show at Dragon Con and other places, and his brother John was actually Ariel the Little Mermaid for our game show last year at Dragon Con. It was tremendous.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Yeah, talented family.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They're awesome. And now you have this fantastic voice cast. What was the decision making as far as how to voice these characters, and like what you wanted to aim for voice wise?
Yeah, it was I had ideas of their voices in my head, and I had essentially a wish list. But then I also the producers asked me to write up a description of each of the characters. So in addition to having a photo of the puppet, there was a character description that went with it. And then they sent it out to agents, trying to find the right, actor or actress that could match that character. And it was an interesting process. I think it was a little unorthodox. It was, but it worked out great. I mean, I think our producer, Sultan Saeed Al-Damraki, he always loved breaking the news to me who our latest cast was. He'd call me from the United Arab Emirates, and he'd say, "Sam, are you sitting down? I have some news for you." And I'd sit down, and they'd break it to me. I'm like, "Oh my God!" Or there are a few in there I didn't know because I'm not I don't know a lot of the actors out there. My area is definitely sci-fi fantasy. So,
sure.
If it was Ian McKellen, I'd be like, "Oh my God, Gandalf."
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
If it's somebody, someone from a more kind of a straight mainstream dramatic film or whatever, I wouldn't necessarily know who that actor was. I got comfortable though with getting on the computer when Sultan would call me. I get on the computer and have IMDb ready to go. So if he told me somebody I didn't know, I could look him up. But he loved breaking the news, and that was his team really. The Dark Dunes team, they're the ones that brought everyone to the table, and it was a building process. It's kind of like what you hear about when you build a coalition or a team for any kind of project. It started with a couple of key people. They had just worked with Malcolm McDowell on Sultan's film, so they had Malcolm. And then Malcolm's agent brought in Bruce Davison, who he also repped. So we had Malcolm McDowell and Bruce Davison. And then they went out and they start talking to people, and they say, "Well, we've got Malcolm and we got Bruce. Do you want to be on this kind of thing?" And so I feel like we got George Takei pretty early on. And then once we got George, I think we got Nathan Fillion. And Nathan's interesting because he actually had wanted to work on some puppet stuff, and he was hoping to get to work on some Henson things, and so he was excited to, since Heather Henson was attached as an executive producer, he wanted to work on it because Heather was involved.
Sure.
So and so we just kept building names, and then in the end, I think Whoopi was our last one, and Sultan called me and he goes, "Sam, are you sitting down?" I was like, "Okay, who's our villain?" And he goes, "You'll never believe it." He goes, "It's Marilyn Manson." It was actually Whoopi Goldberg, but I didn't know how to respond to that one. He's like, "Are you there, Sam? I'm just joking. It's Whoopi Goldberg."
I think you definitely got the better part of that deal. I love Marilyn Manson, but reliability and predictability do not seem to be in his wheelhouse right now.
Yeah. I think, well, if you ever get to meet Sultan, he loves to joke around. So
that's awesome.
That's his thing. So it's really thanks to them. But the great part is that, George Takei was on my list, and Nathan Fillion was on my list. And, I'd say, a good number of, it was kind of half and half. And the ones we got that I hadn't imagined were great too. So it all worked out pretty nicely.
Well, that's it reads like a who's who of a great sci-fi convention, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bruce,
I hope we can do that someday. I hope we can get them all there.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. But I mean, Bruce Davison alone, I could sit and watch him just read lines.
Yeah. Oh, he's fantastic, and and he's very technical. He's like trying to determine the accent of the explorer, kind of the character who came to the world in the first place from kind of the humanoid character, and that character's kind of a Reed Richards kind of character actually, and he's like, is he English? Is he New England? Where do you want the accent? And he's like playing with it and fine tuning it and getting it. just right, you know. It was wonderful to hear those vocal qualities. And then, you know, Malcolm McDowell came in, and he just was this presence, you know, like a storm, you know. He's just powerful. And Ed Asner, I mean, he could just breathe, and his voice would be great.
That guy has so much gravitas just being there.
Yeah. And I feel bad because his character is a minor character, and when we were done, it was our shortest recording session. And he's like, "Don't you have more for me?" And I was like, "I'll write you more." And we wrote, you know, we wrote more lines and recorded more just to get more of Ed Asner, you know.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. What, as far as directing the voice actors, what you know in your head what you want to hear, but I'm sure they each, you know, as they get to know the character, kind of bring a little something to the process as well. How collaborative did that end up being?
You know, it depended on each actor. You know, each actor comes in with a different set of skills and different way of doing things. What I found was the ones that had a lot of voice acting experience generally gave me 3 reads, like a small read, and a medium read, and a big read. So then, you know, when we're in editorial making choices, we can go, you know, this performance is a little too weak. Let's go to the next level up, kind of thing. So
wow.
that was a nice thing to get, you know, from the ones who knew how to do it. And then others, you know, if it didn't sound right, then I would ask to get a, you know, sometimes I'd perform the line myself, or I just ask to get a more powerful read. It really just depended on each performer. And probably the most fun was when I actually performed opposite that person with Whoopi Goldberg. It was me and Whoopi. I performed the lines to her, and she responded to my lines. So I was actually performing with Whoopi Goldberg, which was great.
That is awesome. Her voice is just fantastic. I love listening to her, and she has so much range. You know, you don't typically think, you know, when you think, or me anyway, when I think Whoopi Goldberg, more than anything else, I think of her stand-up and of like the comic relief specials on HBO and stuff like that. But she has the ability to get so deep and so serious and so emotive.
And she was, you know, because she's a big sci-fi fan, especially a Trekkie.
Yes.
You know, we talked. That's how we framed the conversation. Was, you know, she'd ask, "What's my character's motivation?" And we talked about, you know, it's the queen who's come to this planet, and she has this gift, which is the mechanization. So she's going to turn all of the living creatures into mechanical creatures because she believes that's the gift that she's brought, and it's going to elevate everybody and make them better. And she's like, "So is she like the Borg Queen then?" And I'm like,
how awesome!
Yeah, you know, let's look at it that way. She's like the Borg Queen, you know. And she's like, or she's a Borg Queen, and my mom, because my mom always tried to make me eat broccoli as a kid because she thought it was better for me. So I'll take a little bit of my mom and a little bit of the Borg Queen, and that's my character.
Oh man, that's awesome!
It's great. It was great to find that with her, you know, and of course, you know, she's Guinan in Star Trek, so there's that quality she brings. She already has lived in a sci-fi world and become a character in another, you know, fantasy world. So
portrayed that inherent like wisdom and mystique that Guinan had. Like as soon as you see her or hear her, you feel like this is a person that knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And I love that. That is my favorite kind of villain, the villain with good intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, you know. When you see the movie, you'll see the kind of the changes that happen with that character too. For me, all the characters, going back to kind of the D&D thing, where, you know, I have a love of characters from that probably, and comics too in general, is that you know, each character has their story and their arc, and I try to give, you know, each character a journey so that by the end of the story, they've all gone through some kind of change or growth or something happens to them, you know. So it's none of our characters are unimportant. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we bring this thing home, I want to talk about where people can find you online. I think you're going to be in Atlanta this weekend. Is that right?
That's right. We're going to be premiering Yamasong, our world premiere. It's going to be at Highland Theater on Sunday, April 15th at 2:15. And then, come and see it. Well, let's pack the house because this will be the first time for a audience in the U.S. especially to see this film and respond to something that's very, that's different from what you're used to anyway. All puppet feature film. There hasn't been an all puppet feature film since Team America and Strings, which both came out in 2004. So that's it's a pretty rare thing to see a puppet film, I think. So that's at Highland Theater on the 15th, and then you can like our Facebook page, Yamasong. I believe it's Yamasong Feature, and then you can also follow us on Twitter at Dark Dunes. Let's see, I'm trying to find. I should have this stuff all ready to go, huh?
Oh, that's fine. We're I sprang the link thing on you. It's no problem at all, believe me. And also, I'll have a link in the show notes too, so people will be able to look it up and get all the links off the Needless Things page. Well, and honestly, in this day and age, everybody knows to Google.
Yeah, I mean, you Google it, but yeah, it's Yamasong. Just do a Facebook search for Yamasong on Facebook, and the official page will come up there. If you go to Dark Dune's Twitter page, you'll be able to follow not just Yamasong, but their other projects as well. So those would be the two best places to find out what's going on. And you can follow me on Instagram at Sam Koji Hale if you want to see. I put stuff up there, puppet stuff. So there's a lot of things I'll throw up there for people to see as well on Instagram.
Excellent. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the Needless Things podcast. And best of luck in Atlanta, man. You should have a great time this weekend.
I can't wait. Atlanta, like I said, Atlanta's been good to us. So Atlanta loves its puppets, and we're bringing you a puppet film. So hope to see everybody at the screening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Okay, so remember, Yamasong March of the Hollows premieres. Its big premiere is right here in Atlanta as part of the Atlanta Film Festival. That's Sunday, April 15th at 2:15 p.m. at the HILAN Theater, Hilan Theater. Big deal that it's debuting here in Atlanta, where, as I said, we love puppetry and we love original fiction, and that's what this is. You can buy your tickets from atlantafilmfestival.com. Go check it out, get in on this, and it's general admission, early bird admission, $10 right now. You guys, you got to go check this out. And Sam is going to be there. He's going to be. I would assume there will be some kind of Q&A involved. It's just going to be awesome. And if I wasn't going to see Weird Al, going to meet Weird Al, I would absolutely be there. So go check it out, atlantafilmfestival.com. You can this and many other incredible things will be going on in Atlanta this weekend. Go to needlessthingspodcast.com and buy some Amazon stuff. Really, right now, that's the only way to support the show, so do that. And if you want to be on the show, if you have a thing to talk about, shoot me an email, phantomtroublemaker@gmail.com. I'm always looking to do interviews. My scheduling is really weird because of my day job and also because of family time, but I do my best to work things in as quickly as I can. If it's something that's time sensitive, I can usually try to work that out. And also join the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group. There you go. I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Needless Things Podcast. You're the best. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Downcast, or in the ears of a Trader Vic's employee. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.